letting go of judgment is actually part of that process of the renewing of our mind that can bring us into higher vibrational states of consciousness.
Hello there and welcome to the Reimagine podcast with Sean and Kylie. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sean.
And my name is Kylie.
We're down by the banks of the Mighty Clarence River in northern New South Wales, Australia. We've got birds chirping in the background. It is early spring. There's cloud cover around today. It's a tiny little bit cooler. We're overlooking a yacht that's actually tied up to a floatable pier. A man is doing some work there. I don't know what he's doing, stocking up or something like that before he heads off again. And we're sitting underneath an enormous jacaranda tree. Is that what that is?
I'm pretty sure it's huge though. It's much bigger than normal.
And it's nearly jacaranda blossom time. So the jacarandas in the town that we live in, there's about 1,800 of them in the town. And they're all just about to start flowering.
And it is spectacular.
So thank you for joining us on our podcast, and we've just painted the scene of where we are so that hopefully it feels to you as if you're sitting right next to us. And as you're sitting right next to us and we're talking amongst ourselves today, we normally like to have a topic to talk about, and this week's topic that we've chosen is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Have you got an actual title for it though, Kylie?
It is going to be out of our series that we're doing at the moment, to church or not to church, to pray or not to pray. So this week it's going to be to judge or not to judge.
To judge, lest ye be judged. To judge or not to judge. Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. The more I look into any topic that we talk to regarding the spiritual existence and the belief in God, the Creator, and Jesus, and all of these topics that we talk about, the more I realise that I just don't think that we can be too black and white about anything, that we can sort of stand firm on one point whilst saying that another point is wrong. It just seems to me like even when it comes to a topic like judging, being judgmental, judging others, that it's almost like there's this movable space in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that is central when we're looking at judgment is that at what point does love actually replace judgment? And we'll also be looking today at how this weaves in and out of which tree are we eating from in the garden? Like, which tree? Is it the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which has good on it as well as evil, or the tree of life? And just how all of those things weave in together that can help us go, okay, do I really need to be looking at this situation through this lens of judgment, or actually am I created and designed to be looking through the lens of love?
So when you Google the word judgment, the first suggestion that I have, number one, is the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. The ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. So we need to come to a conclusion it's suggesting that is sensible. Number two, a misfortune or calamity viewed as a divine punishment. The events of last week, this is an example, the events of last week are a judgment on us for our sinful ways.
And this is the crazy part when we're looking at, or when we're understanding that we don't live out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but we actually live out of the tree of life. And the
What do you
tree
mean we
of
don't
life,
live out of there? Are you suggesting that we don't actually live there, or are you saying that we shouldn't live there, that we should be endeavouring not to live there? What do you mean?
well, I'm saying that we are the tree of life. We are living from the tree of life, and within the tree of life, judgment does not exist. So that actually brings us into the place where it allows love to be our guiding force all the time.
It is your opinion right at this very moment in time that we are supposed to be living, dining off the tree of life rather than the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, you're not saying that we as a couple always live there. We always dine off the right tree. We never dine off the wrong tree. You're not saying that the whole world needs to be where you are. The whole world needs to actually agree with you. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of what it is that you're actually saying.
So, when we are understanding our sonship, or we are understanding more about who we are, what is our destiny from before the beginning of time, what is our relationship with our Creator, with our Father, what are these trees, and how are we created to walk out our life? Is it out of this place of judgment, or is it actually, does that cease to exist when we understand who we are and that we're living out of this place of the tree of life, and then we're coming into the fullness of love? These are all just thoughts I'm putting out there. And these are all thoughts that I have. And I mean, we've unpacked a number of different pieces of this in previous podcasts. But in this one, particularly when we're talking about judgment, these are all just parts of the things that I'd like to flesh out a little bit more as we discuss things today.
Yeah, well, I'm bored, Kylie. Like, even just everything that you just said, and the fact that we've been talking for more than a year, nearly 2 years on a podcast about all these different topics. Sometimes I just get really, really, really bored with all of the conversation.
I love it. So how are you going to spice it up? What are you going to tell us about?
So when I start to think about being bored and why that is that I'm bored about the conversation, I think that's because I have this understanding from possibly just from an upbringing and the place that I was raised and the way that I've been taught to think, that it just seems to be easier to come to a conclusion on a topic. It just seems to be easier to go, okay, well, now we believe this and this is where we're standing firm. And it just seems to be easier when you are actually deciding, I am a Christian who attends church, or I am a Christian who doesn't attend church, or I am not a Christian, I don't believe in God at all. It's just like once you've made up your mind as to where it is that you belong, it just seems to be easier just to stay there. And we just have all these conversations that sort of are all very textual and colourful, and sort of they don't have a conclusion, they don't have an end. There's no decision that we've made as to where we belong or what we agree upon. And it just feels to me like sometimes we need to make a decision. It just seems like it would be easier.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that's part of one of the concepts around this whole judgment love discussion is the origin of duality and judgment. So we're talking about the tree as the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It represents this awakening to duality, like seeing the world through the lens, like you're saying, of right and wrong, good and bad. What creates this foundation for judgment? When humanity ate from this tree of knowledge of good and evil, they became aware of their separatedness, or their separateness. So that leads to the need to label and judge and distinguish between good and evil, because judgment is actually born out of division. And that's where our love becomes conditional, because it becomes based on our moral and external standards. It's like, okay, if we're being good, like what you were saying, are we being punished in the definition of judgment for decisions that we made wrong, or that, we went the wrong way, so this is like just karma coming back to get us, or all of the different ways that we have to say, if you make the wrong decision, you get punished, and if you make the right decision, you get rewarded. But actually living from the tree of life, it transcends this dualistic view, and it offers this state of unity where the opposites actually begin to dissolve and all things are seen as interconnected. So in this state, love flows without conditions or judgment, because it acknowledges the inherent divinity and wholeness in all things.
Yeah, well, we talk to a lot of different people about these types of topics, and there's people within mystic circles, Christian circles. I don't even know what labels to put on these groups of people anymore. Everybody's so confused. Everybody's so not doing anything. Who's doing something, but we're not doing anything because we don't do formulas, because we're not going back, because we're not doing what we've done before, so therefore we're not doing anything. But we feel called to be together in community and tribes and whatever the words are. There's so much confusion that it's almost like nothing is actually happening because everybody's confused. But when everybody's confused, that means that we're all confused, so we are doing something. We're on this path of confusion all together as confused people who are not going anywhere.
It's crazy. And I mean, in the middle of all of this is there are choices to be made. We listened to this really cool talk this week from a friend of ours in the US called, his name is Tommy Miller. And he was talking about the METRON. And I find this really interesting because I really feel like this is one of the things that we love in Wildfire Tribe. This is one of the things that we love just as people, is championing and loving whatever it is that you're called to do in your life, or whatever you decide to do, whatever it is that you're passionate about, and whatever that looks like.
So you don't mean called to do like God rung you up, ring, 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 ring. Oh, who's the calling? Oh, that's God. What do you want me to do? Like that. You don't mean that, do you?
Well, for some people it is that,
just like
yeah.
some Christian word that you've thrown in the middle there, calling. What is your calling?
Well,
what is your purpose?
I think it's a pretty across-the-board known word that
so
people
even
do
for people
use.
that are outside of the religious space,
Yeah, I feel like people feel
they-
called to things.
Right, okay.
Don't you? Do you? Or do
No,
you feel
I
like...
don't feel like the guy like collecting rubbish on Tuesday morning out the front of our house feels like he has a calling,
But
that's
he
his
might.
calling.
He might, though.
You honestly believe that, do you?
Yeah, I do.
That he was put here on earth,
Yep.
and at some stage when he was growing up,
Yep.
he went, my God, I have just had a revelation. I have a calling, and my calling is to actually drive a rubbish truck around and pick up rubbish for the rest of my life.
Yeah, because that is an important part of our society functioning currently at the moment in the way that it is. So there are
I'm not
people
suggesting
out
that
there.
we don't need rubbish men, Kylie.
No, I know, but for all of us to be activated in our place of ultimate joy, then there are people currently on the earth right now who are created to be in joy within those spaces, because they're all required for our society to function in its ultimate capacity.
So calling is purpose, is what you're saying.
I don't know. I haven't really
Or an
thought about
occupation
it.
or a job or something like that. At some stage you feel like you've understood what it is that you're supposed to be doing with your life in this season, and that's your calling, that's your purpose.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that,
right. And
okay.
but I
It
think
took a
that
long time to
I
get
think
to the
calling
definition
probably
of calling.
transcends career, because you can encompass your calling into all kinds of different careers. And for some people, their career is their calling. That's what they really love and desire. And
Anyway, back to where you were before. Tommy Miller, Ohio, New Philadelphia, has a church there called Legacy Church, and he was preaching a message about METRON. That's a really cool word.
it is. I like it.
METRON, I
Yeah.
believe that it's Greek for sphere,
Yes.
or sphere
Yeah.
is English for the Greek word Metatron, and
Yeah.
it just means, in his example that he was using to teach his message on, he was speaking about your sphere of influence, your sphere of responsibility, the place that you live and function and have your being, and who it is that you're connected to and what it is that you're doing. Your calling, Kylie, like you were saying, your
Yeah, that's right.
calling within your Metatron.
Yes, within your Metatron. And I love it because every time he would say it, I would picture myself like in an Incredibles suit. You know those cool suits they had on the Incredibles, like Elastigirl and what's the daughter's name that was
I don't know, but I'd like to see you in one of those suits.
We'll have to find Edna at the secret island and get her to custom make us some, because that would be madness. I would go an invisible suit. Anyway, back to the topic. I really liked just that framing up of, okay, what is in your Metatron? What is in your sphere? What are the things? And I do talk about this in a much more simple way in my book, The New Now, where I talk about the power of saying no, which is basically just putting down all of the things that aren't for you, because often it is those things steal our joy.
They're not your responsibility.
Yeah.
They're not your calling.
Exactly.
They're not something you're supposed to be putting your hand to, because they're outside of your sphere or your Metatron.
Exactly, yeah. And they're often good things. Like lots of those things are good things. So how is this unfolding back into the topic, which you chose this week? That's pretty cool. I love that.
Well, I only
This
chose the topic judgment because it's been a topic for me for a long time now, for many months. I feel like I've been challenged from deep within about what it is that I think about people that I come into contact with physically or even just online, people that you meet in your life and their opinions and their ideas. And I feel like there's this ongoing conversation that I have with myself where I decide whether somebody is right or wrong just from them sharing their opinion. So when they share their opinion on theology or worldview or anything at all in the world of Twitter or X or any of the social media platforms that I look at as well, I find myself deciding one way or the other where a person belongs, where they belong. Do they belong in my sphere, in my Metatron of thinking? Am I okay with what they just said? And therefore I listen to them more and I allow myself to be influenced by what it is that they teach. Have I made a judgment there that they're teaching well and therefore I should absorb more of them? Or do I do the opposite? That person, what they just said about hell and its existence really offends me and it's not something that I agree with. So therefore, I find myself judging the person completely, entirely as being a person that I don't want to learn anything else from, just from an opinion that they have. So I'm walking out this path of deciding whether or not I should be functioning like that. Should I be writing anybody off for an idea that they have when I myself have many ideas that keep on changing all of the time, and I completely expect that people who hear what I say will continue to love me no matter what it is that comes out of my mouth. That's what I desire to have happen for me. So therefore I think that that's what I should be doing towards other people. It's a very big challenge.
Yeah, I love it. And I certainly feel like it is woven into our conversations on a daily basis, a real confrontation within ourselves and to each other about an expectation that we put on ourselves, an expectation that we put on others about where we're all at in our individual walks, and comes back to that place again. Every time we have a conversation that involves some kind of judgment, it divides. It inherently divides.
I don't think that that's the word that you're actually looking for, but it'll do.
It
I'm not making
inherently.
any judgment on the actual word
I know.
or you for using that word.
I'm so bad at pronunciation sometimes.
But I think that the judgment conversation somehow does fit into the two trees in the garden conversation as well. Tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life, and the fruit that comes off either of those trees, depending on which one it is that you're living from. Because I feel like judgment is a decision that you're making, and it's a decision that you're making based on good or bad, right and wrong. And the other tree, the tree of life, has many, many more options, and there's no judgment from that tree. You don't have to actually make a judgment call on somebody's life at all, because that's not even, like, is it even up to us to be doing that? Like, why do we take it upon ourselves to be deciding whether somebody needs to be judged at all anyway?
I did look into this because I remember, people would say, I remember being in different teachings over the years, many, many moons ago, where people would say, judge lest ye be judged, and all these different kinds of verses that they would put out there. So I had a look. One of these verses that is often misinterpreted or twisted is John 7:24, which says, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment, which is really, if you just read it like that, it's saying judge, isn't it?
Well, I can't even get past the fact that you introduced it by saying it's misinterpreted or twisted, because you've made a judgment there as well.
Exactly. I know. I have made
You've decided what it is that you believe about that verse, and that anybody that believes something different, that they've twisted or they're misguided.
It's true. And that is incorrect, because that's not coming out of a place of love, is it? It's still coming out of a place of judgment, which is still coming out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yet again, I don't think that it's not coming out of a place of love, because you should be able to have conversations with people and correct dissect and hone each other's understanding of topics and still be able to be in love at all times. I don't think that confrontation or disagreement means that you're outside of love.
Well, it's true. And this is the complexities of it, because I think some people have used this verse to suggest that Christians are called, here's that calling word again, that Christians are called to pass moral judgment on others, interpreting right judgment as a mandate to correct or criticize people's actions based on religious or moral standards. So this judgment is a belief that judgment is not only permissible but actually required, which fosters a mindset of moral policing. And this is what we see. This is what we see on social media. We see all these moral policemen, all these biblical policemen that feel like it is actually one of their jobs, and I mean,
Their
who's
calling.
to say that this isn't their calling? But anyway, so I was thinking, okay, if there is a misinterpretation there, and often we don't see things in the scripture through the full lens of the context within which they were written, and also within the multidimensional reality of how they actually can play out today. And we often continue to see things through a lens of the prophetic, when possibly a lot of these things we're waiting to happen have actually already historically happened through time. Because there's probably not a generation that has passed that hasn't thought or believed that the scriptures were for their generation, and that the unfolding of events that is written within them is actually going to fall upon them in their time. And all of those times have passed, and here we are today. So I was looking at this scripture and the way that it can be twisted to imply that believers can actively engage in moral judgment of others' behaviours. Those who misuse the verse often stress the need to discern what is right and wrong, taking it upon themselves to critique others' lives, their actions, or their decisions. And this interpretation shifts the focus to a legalistic, judgment-based view of faith, where individuals feel responsible for righteous judgment. But rather, if we look at it through the possible intended meaning, the context of this verse suggests something very different. When Jesus was addressing the Pharisees, who were quick to judge others superficially, often based on appearances or legalistic interpretations of the law, Jesus stated to judge with right judgment is not an endorsement of passing judgment, but rather a call to discern truth with wisdom and compassion, rather than relying on outward appearances or strict surface level interpretations of morality. So in the larger biblical context, Jesus' teachings pretty much emphasize love, forgiveness, and refraining from judgment altogether, as we see in other passages in Matthew. He is actually warning us against judging others.
Matthew 7 verses 1, do not judge, or you too will be judged, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you.
So if we refrain from judgment, and we talk about this, like this energy that we're putting out, and we've talked about this a number of times this week, is the fact that people are choosing not to judge us actually a reflection of our intention not to judge, and therefore judgment doesn't return back onto us?
I think so. That's my understanding, that it's a spiritual law, that not judging other people in return allows no judgment to come back on you. That's what that verse is saying. So if you're leading a life where you're not deciding where somebody fits theologically, or you're not writing people off because you've made a decision on where they belong, whether they're going to heaven or hell at the end of their life, if you're not making those judgment decisions and you're finding that your life is pretty cruisy and you're not being judged, then perhaps it comes because you're not walking around judging people. But as soon as you get into the Facebook world and worlds like that, or even just regular old day-to-day life, and you decide that somebody walking down the street who looks like a man who's got women's clothes on, you decide within yourself and judge them as being a person that shouldn't be around children. Whatever it is, wherever you want to extrapolate that conversation out to, as soon as you decide what it is about that person that you make a judgment call on their life, you've entered into a place where judgment is likely to be coming back on you. When ultimately loving a person unconditionally is more likely to bring about the fullness of who they are and who they were created to be. And maybe a man in a girl's skirt is exactly who they were supposed to be, and maybe loving them unconditionally will change them into a man wearing men's clothes. I don't know the outcome of everybody's life and what it's supposed to look like, but I do believe that the injection of unconditional love upon all people in all circumstances without judgment is more likely to bring a person into the fullness of who they were created to be.
Yeah, and I feel like that moving from judgment into love as well is also like shifting from knowledge into wisdom. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it represents this place of intellect and analysis, this need to categorize life into binaries. Like it thrives in this place of comparison and leading to judgment. And the tree of life, it symbolizes wisdom. It's this place which is more holistic and intuitive. Wisdom understands the deeper essence of reality, sees beyond the surface level of distinctions, and instead of judging based on appearances or actions, wisdom perceives the divine nature within every being and situation, responding with love rather than with condemnation.
But in the Bible, you think about those guys, they were the Facebook guys who have decided they've made up their minds in the darkness and they've judged a situation. They were the guys that rounded up that woman that was caught in adultery and they decided they were going to stone her. And Jesus was there and they got him involved in the conversation and tried to help him make a decision as to what her punishment should have been. And that was when he said, well, it's quite all right. Like if you want to stone this woman, you've decided, you've judged what it is that has to happen to you, you want her stoned, then whoever hasn't sinned can be the first person to throw the rock or the first stone. And amongst them all, of course, they considered themselves to be sinners and therefore they were not able to throw any stones at the woman. And you look at that and you think, hang on a second, we've just been talking about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. It seems to me like Jesus was actually teaching them out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yet I think that what he was doing was he was speaking to them in their language that they understood. He was speaking to them in their language and in their legal system that they had decided was the way that things needed to be judged, to try and help them understand that there was another way.
Yeah, I love it.
The other way is that we don't need to judge people at all. We just need to love people unconditionally, and then we will cease having these issues and we will cease even needing to make judgment calls because the issues won't occur at all.
Yeah.
If we all learn to live in unconditional love and stop looking at, what is the other verse he talks about? Remove the splinter? No. What is it? Splinter, shaving, piece of wood, timber, log. Depends what version of the Bible that you read.
And you had a really good interpretation of this that you shared with me a couple of days ago, which I loved.
So Jesus says in Matthew 7 verse 3, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Judging people. Why do you judge the tiny little issue that is in somebody else's life as being a big problem for them when you're looking at it through the lens of you actually having the same problem?
Tell us your take on it.
So the speck of dust, the timber shaving, the log, the branch, the piece of wood, it seems to me like it doesn't matter which version of the Bible that you read where Jesus is talking about the size of the piece of timber in your eye compared to the size of the piece of timber in another person's eye. It seems to me like the timber reference has something to do with a tree. And I think what Jesus is also telling us in there is that you need to consider which tree it is that you're functioning from and the fruit in your life, where it comes from. Which tree is it coming from? If you're looking at somebody else and judging that they're living in a way that is wrong, you first need to consider, is there anything wrong in the way that I'm living? And if you're doing that, It's this around and around and around and around version of right and wrong, good and bad. It's like some maniacal existence where we never get to a place of freedom and life in abundance, where we need to consider actually dropping living from that tree altogether and living from a completely different tree that has a completely different fruit that does not involve judgment at all.
Yeah, exactly. Because really, judgment is often rooted in fear. It's fear of the unknown. It's like fear of being wrong. It's fear of not measuring up. It's a defense mechanism to protect the ego by labeling others or oneself as bad or unworthy. But love, when experienced out of the tree of life, it's based on trust and this deep sense of security in the divine order of things. It's like it doesn't fear others or the unknown because it recognizes that all things are interconnected within our creator, like within that oneness that we have within him. And I feel like in this state, judgment actually becomes irrelevant because love sees no need to categorize or to protect itself. It just is in this beautiful flow. It's this inherent, it's this, it's just this goodness. It's this place within which the purpose of all things is within this love, in this beautiful love that we were created, the love of our Father, the nature of God himself. It is actually our nature. It's that beautiful place that we're all created to be in, that place of rest, which is in the fullness of love. And it's like when you were talking before too about what Jesus was saying, I was just thinking about that grace as well, that grace is this natural fruit of living out of the tree of life as well. It's like this unconditional love that doesn't measure. It's this beautiful place that doesn't evaluate based on worthiness, and it doesn't condemn. Like grace sees every person and every experience through this lens of divine love. It's offering compassion and forgiveness and acceptance, like all those things that that is so often really hard to do. But really, if we just find ourselves in that place that we're not needing to divide and put people into categories and try to understand all the whys, then we can just be in the presence of people that we don't understand when we're not surrounded in judgment, but we're actually seated in love.
I think that religion is the fruit of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I feel like that tree is firmly planted and healthy, and it is there for people to dine on if they decide that they want to be religious. They want to make decisions about how the rest of the world needs to think. They want to stand in judgment of the rest of the world. They want to look down their noses at the way that people live and decide that they're not worthy of the love of God as much as they themselves are. I feel like that's where religion thrives, is in that place of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, it's so true. And I don't know that people realize that it's really easy to function out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that there isn't even a place where we find ourselves checking ourselves on that. Like, hold on a sec. What tree am I eating out of? That's the same tree that we all bag Adam and Eve out for eating off, because with our hindsight, we can just go, why would you do that? But yet we continue to eat off those trees all the time.
Even once we've understood and accepted the fact that Jesus died for us to have a relationship with the Creator, after we have that revelation and we step into the place of being what Christians call being saved, immediately we try and start living in a good way again, in a non-sinful way, in a way that decides that you're not living in a bad way, you're living in a good way, you're trying to see the best in people, you're trying not to judge people. It's like this awareness of the knowledge of good and evil becomes alive and well in you as you become a Christian person, as you become a religious person. Immediately you step straight back into doing the very same things that Jesus gave his life up for you to not have to do.
Exactly. Like in Romans 8:1, it says, "For there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." So condemnation is one of the fruits of judgment. It's that place where we realize Christ's finished work on the cross completely absorbed and dealt with judgment.
Like once and for all, forever, or just for
Like
then
it's
back there when that
gone.
was written?
Yes.
Is it ongoing? Is it for us? Is it just for some of us? Is it just for some of us who dress well and go to church on Sundays? So who's this for?
It's been cancelled for everyone forever.
Seems like that's too easy, Kylie.
But that's the hard part. I think it doesn't make any sense in a world where people are so disconnected from who they are that they're living in this place of great dysfunction.
Seems like a tough judgment call that you're making there, Kylie. That in this world where people are not living in the reality of who they are, and they're living in a wrong manner. So I think you've stepped straight back in there immediately.
And this is our life, isn't it? Like, this is the last few months for us on steroids, where we are constantly pulling each other and ourselves up. Hold on a sec, we can't say that. Hold on a sec, that's judging. Hold on a sec, that's judging.
So the awareness of our desire to not live in judgment of other people is actually become so difficult in our life that it's causing a rift in our relationship and causing us to not live a life of abundance because we're judging ourselves as living in a place of judgment.
And it seems to be far more woven into the blanket of our lives than we ever possibly really ever imagined, I think. This is very challenging. I've got a couple of quotes from some well-known people through history. And Mother Teresa, she says, "If you judge people, you have no time to love them."
What would she know?
Like, she was emphasizing the incompatibility, I think, between judgment and love, because her teachings were centered on unconditional love and compassion. I mean, you have to have unconditional love and compassion to be able to work in the places that she worked and do the work that she dedicated her life
Yeah,
to.
it was too bad for her. She was only looking after sick people. What about annoying people? What about people that are drunk all the time and stoned and on drugs? And you see those guys in America that are taking fentanyl, and not just guys but girls as well.
Very, very hard.
How hard is it to work around people like that and not be
Yeah.
judging those people?
Yep, I know. And even
We've
for any of
been
us,
those people.
it's all very hard to not judge those situations, especially when you haven't walked through any of those situations yourself. It's easier to judge, I think. Carl Jung is a philosopher and a psychologist. He said, "Thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge." I think that's interesting.
So thinking is difficult. That is why most people judge. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's what Carl Jung said. I think he's speaking to the simplicity of judgment as a superficial reaction. Like, it's contrasting it to...
We haven't got time to think about things or process things, so
That's
we
it.
just make a judgment.
Exactly. So we just make a judgment because it's a deeper work to actually move into understanding and love. It actually it requires from us effort and introspection, consideration. It actually requires us to be seated on our seat of rest so that we can actually just, things can happen around us and situations and people can flow in and out, and we're just okay. We're okay with it because we have an inner peace that supersedes all of those things out there that when you're too busy to actually ponder and be able to think and come into your own revelation of his wonder and goodness and just your own peace, then it's much, much easier to just see all the problems of the world and make judgments.
When Jesus talks about not judging other people lest you be judged to the same measure, etc., do you think that that's just like a Carl Jung or a Mother Teresa quote, and it's something that we can just apply or not apply, or we can just go, "Oh, this sounds like a lovely idea, Jesus. It was really nice that you said that and that somebody wrote that down as you saying that"? Or do you think he's actually saying, don't do that? Like, Just don't do that. And not only just don't do that or else you're going to be in big, big trouble and your life's going to be a mess. But in the saying don't do that, do you think that he's actually giving us permission to not do it? Like he's actually saying, don't do that, as in, not as in, or you will be in big trouble. He's saying you have the ability to not do that.
Yeah.
Like he's not telling you to do something that you don't have the ability to do. Or else that would be pretty twisted.
Exactly. And that's the one you were just reading, Matthew 7:1-2, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Was that a spider in my hair?
Yeah, you just had a spider in your hair.
That's so freaky. And you got it out.
Well, part of it.
Is some of it still in my hair?
No, I got it out. Yeah, you did. You actually had a spider
How big was
walking
it?
through your hair. Well, it doesn't matter. It's not there anymore. And I just knew that I couldn't say anything about it being there, or else you'd freak out and you'd start flipping your head around and I wouldn't be able to get it out. But yeah, a spider had fallen in your hair. I make no judgment as to what it is that it was trying to do to you, whether it was just trying to bite your head and cause you pain or whether it was trying to kill you. I'm not sure. You've been bitten by spiders before, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. And one landed me in hospital for a long time. So that wasn't much fun.
But anyway, that spider is gone. Back to the topic of judgment.
Do you think that Jesus was teaching that judgment was a reflection of one's own inner state, like urging people to approach life with love and humility rather than with judgment? You know, as he's saying, you will be judged with the measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. Because it's saying, okay, what you're giving out, you're receiving back. It's these same things that we keep talking about, this energy that we're putting out there, the things that we're doing to others. Are we surprised that these same things are coming back to us? So even if that comes with, like, okay, if we look at that from, well, if I'm putting out a frequency of lack, am I receiving a frequency of lack back? And how far does this go into every single space? We know that love casts out all fear. And if out of fear is a root that then can breed into judgment. So love casts out all judgment as well. Love, anything that's root is fear, can be dissolved or removed in love.
I feel like everything that Jesus taught about in the Bible was such as the judgment that we're stuck on talking about today is not optional as in don't do this or this will happen. I feel like it's permissive. I feel like he's actually giving us permission in the knowledge of what he's sharing with us for it not to be in our lives. He's not saying don't do this or this will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, he is saying that, but beyond that, I feel like he is actually saying to us, I'm sharing something with you that you don't have to walk in at all. Just because it exists and it exists in the world and it exists in some people's life, I'm telling you, it doesn't need to exist in your life if you just choose for it not to be there.
Yeah, I love it. Exactly.
Now, if we could all actually make the decision to believe that judgment doesn't exist in our own lives of anybody else or any situation, what would the world look like today?
I love it. Well, I think, say if we go back to what you were talking about religion, so the religious systems.
Why would you want to go back there? I've just let us out of there. I've just let us out of the slavery of Egypt, Kylie, into the promised land. And you're taking us straight back.
No, but it's the perfect example because those religious systems were built on judgment and performance and moral superiority. And this traditional religion, it focused on judgment, which was like pointing out sin, shortcomings, failings. And often when we're constantly looking at all of those things, that's what we're seeing. That's the frequency we're releasing. That's what we're seeing in our own lives. More things coming against us, more shortcomings, more failures. Oh, I've failed again. I've failed again. Rather than religious systems extending this place of grace and having this frequency of love and acceptance. It's that place that you're talking about. Imagine if we all encouraged one another to move beyond any of these judgmental attitudes and just embrace unconditional transformative love, the unconditional transformative love of God.
Imagine if there wasn't the need for 45,000 Christian denominations.
It's a lot of division.
I think it's something like that. You can Google that and find out the answer for that issue for yourself. And a part of that problem, which is why we need to have new denominations every day of the week, is because we're judging other people's ideas about our faith walk as being wrong. We're deciding that I can't be in relationship with you whilst you think that way about a verse in the Bible. So I'm separating myself from you and starting a new gang over here with a new name, and we're going to be the more right than you denomination. And we have done it again and again and again through judging other people as not being right, through judging other people as having a limited understanding. But what if we were all able to stand together as one and overlook, like have no judgment on each other's denominational beliefs at all?
Yeah.
I stand not in judgment of you. I stand firm in the belief that I am actually only required to love all people, including you, who have got this strange understanding of a verse that I'm not saying that I agree with it or that I disagree with it, because I look past that. I look past that because we're told that we can. We've been told that we can live in a place of non-judgment. We can actually live. We've been given permission to live without having to judge other people. And so if we can not be judging all of the other denominations, can we just have one big one? Isn't that like what we're supposed to be living in?
Yeah.
A body of believers, an ecclesia, a gathering of people that are all lovers of God and His creation, and not divided up depending on certain little bits and pieces that we judge to be wrong in other people's lives.
I love it. No judgment. No judgment in Christ. Like that. His finished work, it's removed judgment. It's just exactly like you're saying, coming out of this place where we're just encouraging one another to live from the perspective of love, like free from the need to judge or be judged. And just in that space, it results in this place of freedom from condemnation, because judgment brings condemnation. Condemnation is not nice to sit under. And freedom is such a beautiful place. Freedom is where it all began. Like every big move across the earth has started out of a desire for freedom. It comes out of that place because within ourselves we know that we were at the very foundation of everything created to be free.
We're supposed to be walking around the garden together, naked, and not even being aware of our nakedness.
Exactly. Because there isn't any layer of judgment in any of it. Like it's so incomprehensible, really, because our world is so saturated in judgment. And I feel like especially in the places where we were created to be free from judgment is actually where most of the judgment I understand in the world to come out of. So much judgment comes out of the body of Christ that is actually created to be free from judgment and just to be consumed with love.
Causes division, misunderstanding, hate, war, all of those horrible occurrences that have happened throughout the history of mankind. So many of them can be attributed to people of Christian denomination, and we're in there with them. We're believers in God and Jesus. We're in the same boat, the boat that's sitting right in front of us in the river where we're seated right now. It's like we're all living in that one boat, and we're supposed to be able to live in that one boat together and actually live in a place of joy at all times. But we just can't seem to agree on stuff or look past differences and make judgment calls on other people. And we have to go and get our own boat. And we have to have many boats, like the boats on the river in front of us. Now we've got to have lots of different boats, and some of them are motorised boats and some of them are sailing boats, because it depends which denomination you're in as to which vessel it is that you travel in now, and whether or not yours is the right way or the wrong way. We're just continually walking in so much judgment of each other in every area of life, that it does nothing but separate us.
Exactly. And I think ultimately we need to understand that all of those little tiny separate boats are actually an illusion, because we're all part of the oneness within Him, which is a beautiful oneness within one another. And the ultimate is that we would be vibrating at the highest frequency that is possible. And there is that beautiful frequency that we can vibrate in, that is love. I really like how Joe Dispenza puts it. Joe Dispenza is known for his work in neuroscience and personal transformation, and he often speaks about judgment as a limiting mental and emotional pattern that affects personal growth and well-being. And he's quoted as saying, when you judge another person, you separate yourself from them and from the possibility of understanding and connection. And it's really interesting because he teaches that judgment keeps people stuck in the same emotional states, reinforcing negative patterns of thought and behavior, because judgment is actually seen as a low vibrational state that hinders individuals from accessing higher levels of consciousness where love, compassion, and unity reside. So instead of judging, he's actually encouraging practicing awareness and compassion, which help break the cycle of old patterns and open the mind to new possibilities for healing and growth. So it's like letting go of judgment is actually part of that process of the renewing of our mind that can bring us into higher vibrational states of consciousness, where we can actually become the river of life itself that's flowing from within.
We have permission and an ability to walk in a non-judgmental existence.
Yes, we do. I believe it. Imagine it. Just imagine it. It's actually hard to imagine, because as much as I want to be able to say, oh, yeah, I'm so grafted into the tree of life. I live out of that place. I'm just love and healing and compassion. That isn't actually my everyday life all the time.
The way you just said was, imagine it. It's just so hard to imagine. You've just said that it's hard to imagine. But
I know.
Imagine that it's not hard to imagine.
Exactly.
Reimagine, Kylie, is the name of our podcast. And what we're doing is planting the seed, the idea that it's actually not difficult to reimagine.
Yeah.
That you can walk in non-judgment.
Yes.
If you're saying straight out of your mouth, as soon as I've suggested that it's possible, it's just so hard to imagine, well, then it is.
It's so
hard to
true.
imagine. It's not hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Just reimagine that this world is actually saturated in unconditional love.
Come on.
And walk out that experience in your own reality every day.
Yes.
Of every week, of every month, of every year, of your immortal existence.
Yes. Yes.
In non-judgment of any experience that anybody else is having.
Yeah.
And wars would cease to exist.
It's true, they would, because they wouldn't be able to exist in a world where there was no judgment. It's so true. I love it. It's really powerful what you were just saying. And it's so true. I know you're really great for me in that way, where you check my conversation. Wait, hold on a sec. You can't be saying that. We actually have a reimagine podcast where we're actually moving beyond I can't imagine into we are reimagining what our reality can look like, and we're engaging with the possibilities of the all things are possible. Because for all of us to be stepping into the fullness of who we already are, we need to be allowing ourselves and our mind to access those higher vibrational frequencies where we can come into the fullness of, yes, this is possible. This is my reality. This is how I'm now speaking. This is what we're framing up.
If God so loved the world that he sent his son to actually bring us into the fullness of relationship with our Heavenly Father at all times, and that within our understanding out of the book that we call the Bible, it has all these great ideas about how we can live in non-judgment and we can live in unconditional love, etc. Do we honestly believe that God has sown those seeds of thought inside of us to be possibly true and that they're not? Like, what kind of Heavenly Father do we believe in as the God of love?
Yeah.
That He would sow in us ideas that we can live in unconditional love of everyone else in the world,
Yeah.
and for it not to come about. It
Yeah.
seems to me like the decision is ours.
Exactly. The decision is ours. And it's also like he had that conversation with me at very, very difficult times in our relationship where I was finding it really, really hard to love you because we were not being very nice to each other. And I felt like he was just saying to me, just love him exactly where he's at. And you don't even need to love him with your love because I'll give you my love to love him with. And then when you're engaged in that space, not only have you got the ability to love one another through really difficult situations, but you also receive that same love that you're being given to love one another with. And that is so powerful because it's like there's an infusion into you of his love, and that's also being given for you to love the unlovely with.
So the unconditional love that's required for you to love me unconditionally doesn't even have to be conjured up from deep within you.
No.
It's actually God's love that is in you, that is unconditional, that you're allowing to flow into me, that is also changing my existence and everybody that we come into contact with.
Exactly. And that's the love that he gives us to love the world around us into the fullness of who it was created to be. This is the sun's rising. This is us awakening to who we are, and this is bringing transformation to all of creation. This is the restoration of all creation. This is bringing each other back through the fullness and the flow of life and love that comes from being tapped into that tree of life, being filled and overflowing with the goodness that flows out of the revelation of living out of that place.
This is not being the prodigal son that did all the bad things and left home and really messed up and then had to come back. And it's not being the son that was at home the whole time who had access to the riches of the whole empire that he didn't actually delve into. This is actually the existence of being all of those people, including Jesus, including Jesus's brother, including the father in the story, the prodigal son and the son, all at the same time.
Exactly.
And we have access to the riches of the kingdom of heaven completely and wholly right now.
Exactly.
If we just choose to believe that we do.
Exactly.
That there's nothing left for us to do to get those things.
Exactly. And I think living out of that place, and I love your interpretation of that. Like, I love the way that you see that so often need to remind ourselves that we're not that person in that story or that person in that story or that person in that story. We're Christ within. We're actually the essence and the frequency and the vibration and the fullness of everything that he was and greater things than these. We are the one that we are waiting for.
That story in the Bible of the prodigal son is there to show you the result of what it's like to be dining out on the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's showing you that in the past there was a story of a young boy who left home because he didn't realize who he was. It's not the story that we're living in now.
Because we're living in the fullness of life and life in abundance. And that's the story that we're now connected to. We're living out of the foundation of the tree of life. Like, we are living out of the fullness of Christ. We are living out of love. Living out of love, baby. And now it's like an overflowing, bubbling up love because now I have all this love within me for you and I have God's love within me for you. And we just are so loved up, baby.
And it's not just for those people that are sitting across from you that are probably easier to love than some other people that you might encounter, but that
Yeah.
unconditional love
Yeah.
from God that He has for you is also to flow through you to those other people that are sometimes more challenging because we're not walking in judgment of them or their lives.
Exactly. Yeah. So have the most beautiful love filled week as each situation we flow in and out of, we bring our awareness to our choice, the choice that we each have, because we're really, really powerful in every situation. Do I choose right now to judge or do I choose to love?
And thank you so much for joining us on the Reimagine podcast. It's been lovely to have my voice in your ears. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for giving the podcast life. Thank you for sharing the podcast with other people.
Yeah.
And we look forward to meeting you one day, one-on-one, actually in person.
Absolutely. Jump onto our Patreon, guys. We would love to see you on our Patreon channel. We appreciate everybody that supports us through Patreon. It helps everything to continue to go and grow. And that is patreon.com/wildfire tribe. So jump on there. We would love to meet you in that space. All right, guys, have a beautiful week and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you.
My body is a temple of nakedness and light. A place where I am real with me, a place of new